Welcome back, everybody. It is plain as day that we have a serious drug crisis in our country, and a lot of it is flowing across our southern border. Social media isn't helping the cause any at all. Our next guest, he is retired from the Drug Enforcement Administration after nearly 3 decades of sounding the alarm and working to keep our nation safe. He is Derek Maltz, Sr., and he joins us now. Welcome to the show, Derek.
Thank you, Amanda. Appreciate it, John.
Good to be with you.
Derek, so many of the things that you have said over the course of your career, we are finally hearing echoed in the halls of Congress, especially on the Republican side of the aisle with respect to drugs pouring across our border, the fact that the cartels are terrorists. Talk to us about the progress, or maybe lack thereof, that has been made since you began your tenure at the DEA.
Well, let's just start off by saying this is another fentanyl emergency day in America. 9,000 dead Americans, mostly kids, young kids as young as 12 or 13 years old. We have a very serious threat that we've never seen in the history of the country. I'll just make sure this is clear. What we have now, we've never seen. When I worked in the DEA running the Special Operations Division, a lot of this stuff started happening out of China, bombing the country with synthetic cannabinoids, synthetic cathinones, and then fentanyl. But fentanyl by far has been the most deadly, the most dangerous, and it's a national security threat that's really being ignored for the most part by the White House and key leadership in Washington, D.C.
Derek, I want to ask you this. This is one of those places where you've got two countries really in cahoots. You've got the Mexican cartels that are the final delivery and shopping centers for this fentanyl, but China starts this whole process. From all the experience you had at the DEA, what is China's motive? Why do they want this scourge being imposed on America?
John, based on my experience as an investigator, my father was in the DEA 30 years. I have it in my DNA. My brother died in the Air Force. It's in our family's DNA. And China has, pushed their unrestricted warfare. They're using fentanyl to kill our future generation. They are very successful right now. And I will quote what Mike McCall said recently in a Homeland Security meeting with a bunch of congressional members. He said the greatest foreign policy for China is to sell fentanyl to America. We started seeing this around 2012, John. We started seeing kids dead in their bedrooms up in the New England area and down in South Florida. We had no idea what it was, and it was just the ongoing attack using synthetic drugs, sending that stuff from China, from the chemical labs, right to American families, right to bedrooms of these kids. But now, because over the years, they've successfully killed off, hundreds of thousands of Americans, they now have turned over the dirty work to the Mexican cartels. They're using the cartels as a proxy to destroy and destabilize our country. And it's working very well.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, we've had guests on this show come on and call it the chemical poisoning of America, and I don't think that that's histrionic at all. I wanted to ask you, it feels like Groundhog Day every time China is behind another drug crisis in our country, and there are many members of Congress, mostly on the Republican side of the aisle, but some Democrats as well, who have championed legislation to try to solve this crisis, or to move in that direction, I suppose. What does it take to get a larger faction of Congress on board? Does it take knowing someone who died of it? I mean, what does it take?
Well, that's a great question, Amanda. There's a lot of families. I work with many nonprofit organizations, primarily Lost Voices of Fentanyl, and that's pretty much the question of the day. Nobody can understand who in America wants to see 13-year-old kids dying in their bedroom, ordering up pills on Snapchat and social media and having it delivered to the house like it's a pizza or some food, right? So everybody has the same concern. We don't know the answer to that. But what we know is that right now, it's like if you had a massive water leak in your house and the plumber came to your house, the first thing they have to do is shut down the supply. Well, that's what we have. We have our countries being flooded with not only deadly fentanyl, with the pills and the powder, but methamphetamine is being pushed into this country like we've never seen ever. So we have synthetic drugs being made in these labs in Mexico. We know where a lot of the labs are. We have to get way more aggressive, and we have to work with the Mexicans, and we have to hold them accountable to shut down these labs. We also have to shut down the chemical flow, the precursors that are coming out of China. That's why the cartels now are producing such large amounts of these synthetic drugs. But what many people are not talking about, and this is what concerns me, China is also providing the primary money laundering services for the cartels. The money's being collected in America by young Chinese national students on visas. They're dropping the money off to Chinese businessmen. They're buying property, they're buying land in the billions of dollars, and the money is going back to the cartels. The laundered money gets back almost instantly. They've developed really sophisticated, using encrypted communication apps. They also use the Chinese banking apps, so they move money freely. That's a national security threat that we haven't seen in a long time. I don't know if we've ever seen one this complex, but no one's talking about it. The Republicans are only talking about it because, in election season, their constituents are complaining because all these kids are dying. No one knows what's going on.
Yeah, well, thank God your voice is out there. I remember a few years ago I was at Sarah Carter's movie preview, and you were talking about it then. It's gotten so much worse, but your message has never changed. Derek, I want to ask about another component, because one of the fuels of the last 18 months of this crisis is human trafficking has created such a cash flow for the cartels that they could expand their drug operations in a way that I don't know we could have imagined 20 years ago. Joe Biden and the Biden administration's open border policies really is a major fuel for this fentanyl scourge, isn't it?
Absolutely, John. You're right on point. And this is something that I'm not an expert on, human trafficking and sex trafficking, but I have a lot of friends, former Homeland Security officials, Border Patrol officials that have taught me a lot over the last couple of years. And I know you know these guys as well. Bottom line is the cartels are making billions of dollars off the control of the border. Right now, they're operating with impunity. They've teamed up with the Chinese criminals. So it's this perfect storm that's happening. Meanwhile, our kids are dying at historic levels. So there are some people, John, that will suggest they make more money from the human trafficking than they do from the drug trafficking. I don't know if that's true, but what I know is that they are operating freely and they control everything that's happening going south and north into the country of Mexico and into America. And that's really troubling, because without border security, you have no security. And the other problem is the Americans are a little bit naive in this country, because what's happening at the border is going to impact every single family in America one way or another, whether it's taxes to pay for all these people, this invasion that we have going on now, or, the schools are going to be overcrowded. They're not going to be speaking English, and all the money we have to spend, plus all the deaths right now that are going on from fentanyl and methamphetamine. It's outrageous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and another component of this, I think, we can throw ample justified blame on the cartels and on China, but this doesn't happen without the consent of political leaders. And I'm speaking specifically about city officials who allow this to take place on their streets. I don't know if you saw this video that went viral the last couple of days of a homeless woman, I believe in Portland, talking about how easy it is to be homeless. She gets 3 square meals a day. She can shoot up in between those meals. What is the responsibility of our country and our political leaders to make sure this stops?
Man, that's a great question. Another awesome point. Obviously, there's a issue with workers in America now. They really enjoy the freebies that they're getting from the government. We have the poor leadership in this country, soft on crime. We have hugs for thugs, not bullets policies in Mexico. So it's really disturbing, but there's no accountability. That's the bigger issue, Amanda. That's why crime is out of control. The bad guys don't feel like there's any, punishment coming if they get caught. They're, breaking into stores. They're stealing stuff. They're hitting people over the head down the streets. You don't feel safe anymore. The homeless are getting taken care of. Now they're setting up in certain cities, obviously the safe injection sites. So we're teaching our kids, it's good to use drugs as long as it's safe. Meanwhile, the entire illicit drug supply is tainted. That's the problem.
I know.
So today,
and it's going to America's youth. It's
terrifying. I go into a safe injection site today.
Derek, I'm so sorry. We have to let it go there, but your voice needs to be amplified in this conversation over and over. So we'll have you back on. We've got to take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back.